Hey, what's going on, guys? Hey, got a real treat for you. We got Chris Gardner from Biochar podcast. We get into the science of domes, biochar, and government weather manipulation. Enjoy.
Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up? Hold out that glass, baby, because you know what time it is. We about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. Hey, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey, guys. Be sure and hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. Be sure and check out this banner down below with all of our social medias at their various platforms. Man, if you would check those out, that would be much, much appreciated. Hey guys, I got another one lined up for you. This is a man that he's been making his rounds. He's an intelligent dude. He wears many hats. We've tried to hook up a couple times, and life has gotten in the way. And like I say, anytime we have some issues and technical issues, scheduling issues, man, that's usually because we got a banger of an episode lined up, and the Hasatan does not want it to happen. So we put our nose to the grindstone, baby, and we made it happen. But I'd like to welcome the show for the first time. Hey, first time of many, I am sure, Chris Gardner. Chris, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Doc. It's great to be here with you.
Hey, man, for those that's not familiar with you and what you do, your show and your business, just give everybody a kind of a feel of what you are about.
Wonderful. I am a podcaster. I'm a host of the Biochar podcast. I also am a dome builder. You can see one of the models of my domes back there. In the central part of the United States, in the Mozarks, as we call it. And then I also have a biochar company that I just launched. It's blackgoldbiochar.com. And if you don't know what biochar is, it is just it's essentially we cook biomass and we make a stable carbon amendment for soil. So soil will be nice and healthy.
Mm-hmm. So, you're into this, architecture as well too.
Yes.
You had mentioned a dome and kind of pointed to that, for us dummies. Kind of, break that down. What is a dome, and what's the purpose of that?
A dome is technically a hemisphere. So all of us know what a sphere is. It's a ball. If you were to cut that ball in half, that's the hemi, that's the half of it. And I build those types of domes out of all different mediums. I've built them out of geopolymers. That's what I was telling you off air before when you came on to my show. I've built with geopolymers, which like a lot of people that are into looking into like either Tartaria or the Little Season or Roman cement, all those things that kind of deal with this like self-correcting, coherent old concrete that's known as a geopolymer. I built with that. I built with earth, just regular old earth, different clay substrates. Now I mainly build with aircrete and concrete. And aircrete, if you know what concrete is, it's cement mixed with aggregate and steel. And then aircrete's the same thing. It's cement, but it's mixed with little air bubbles. So I'm actually building bubbles, little Hemis bubbles with bubbles, and that acts as an insulator. And then I do nylon cement. I do all different types of cements and concretes on my domes. And I've been building those all over the world. I built them in Europe. I've built them in Central America. Now I'm building them in the center part of the United States. So it's a tried and true way of building. And I got into that as growing up as a child in South Florida because we had a lot of hurricanes. And you kind of see what works and what doesn't with construction. And my dad was a commercial contractor that built massive buildings, like 30-story skyscrapers and things like that. And when we had Hurricane Andrew like mow through South Florida in 91, I was a kid, and I just saw the devastation of that. And so in my family, we kind of like saw this little documentary on domes, and I was like, and my dad was like really intrigued by it. And then also growing up in Florida, we would go to like the Epcot ball, and I learned about Buckminster Fuller, with the big old Bucky ball there. And so I'd always kind of had domes on the brain until but I didn't really do anything with it because I wasn't in construction per se until I moved to Costa Rica. And then in Costa Rica, we had a really crazy earthquake season combined with a really wet, rainy season. So it created all these like mud lahars. Like we had all these, sides of mountains kind of like slide. And it was pretty devastating. And I saw like a lot of really well-built stick frame homes, like conventional homes that were excellently built. Like the contractors did a great job. But because the earth was so soft and the conditions were what they were, a lot of these buildings failed. And I didn't have enough money to lose per se. And so I was just like, I should do a dome here. But the way people were doing domes were mainly geodesics. And so I learned this system from CalEarth University it's a beehive dome. They call it flexible form rammed earth construction. So I was drawing all these models of how to do that. And then my first client had me build him 3. And from then on, I've like learned how to build like 4 other different types of domes and hybridize them and mix and match, different types of building techniques depending on where I'm building for clients. So like if I'm building for somebody that's up north, I can, insulate it heavily. If I'm building for somebody in the tropics, I can keep it a very lean building and, have other considerations. So it's all site dependent and things like that. And I don't know if you've ever been in construction at all, but it's always site dependent. So I try not to get too specific in podcasts talking about it because I have to do a site visit. I have to know all the ordinances and wherever I'm building and things like that. But that's been my main occupation, since 2008. So it's been a minute doing that. And then we also build all different types of weird structures because I like all curvilinear stuff. So I've built Vesica Pisces homes and conch shell homes and just anything that has a curve in it, I'm interested in kind of getting my hands into.
Now, is that just simply like aesthetic and like for strength?
No.
Or is there like some kind of science, like, electromagnetic stuff or frequency? Because I know some people talk about that with spheres and different things like that.
No, it's very scientific because like say you have a flat plane. For those of you just listening, I'm holding up a little pamphlet. Given this amount of surface area, if I put a 6-degree bend in it, now it's 6 times as strong. If I put a double bend in it, like make it concave, given the same surface area, it's 13 times as strong. So domes are incredible. The gentleman that got my brain fully sold on it was this Austrian naturalist named Victor Schauberger. And I was reading this book about his work, and he was showing he was building these log flumes and these egg-shaped water tanks that during his day and time, people thought there was no way that they could handle the volume and the speed of the water that he said they could, and they handled flawlessly. And so when I saw that, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And so knowing a little bit about hydrodynamics and how all air is a fluid. I don't want to get too nerdy, but knowing how things want to flow.
Hey, you're in the right place for that, brother. Nerd
Well,
out.
I saw like essentially what makes a dome function so well in a high wind situation like a hurricane or even like your lesser tornadoes is that there's no low pressure that forms. So no matter how well you build a regular roof, most roofs have a gable, right? They have this triangulation at the top of the roof.
Yeah. I know a little bit about those. I built roof trusses and floor trusses for a while.
Yeah. So these roofs are very strong because they're a triangle. But there's one problem. When wind goes over it, it acts like a wing because of Bernoulli's principle. When you have air that goes over something faster than under it, it creates lift. And so the more surface area that you have on the top, you'll always have more surface area on the top of your roof than your flat ceiling underneath, right? So when wind flows over that, it pops it up. Well, with domes, you don't have that. And then also domes, because they're round, you don't get any of like the eddy currents. Like, so when wind passes say a cubical building, there'll be eddy currents that will happen on the back side where the wind has rushed past the building. That also causes lift and pops things. So there's all these different things that a cube, and I'm referring to a cube like a normal home is more or less a bunch of little cubes put together. And so with a triangle on top, and they function great, but they don't function great when they have shear against them. And because whenever you have shear, and this is what I was dealing with in Costa Rica, is when the ground moves left to right or forward and backwards, the foundation or the footers of the building will always go in the opposite direction of the roof. So you end up getting parallelograms. Well, domes, they move as one. They just kind of float on the top. Like I have one here. Like this is, hopefully this doesn't destroy my mic, but like the dome will just move on the top of the earth just as one thing. And this is known as being monolithic. So for me, it just made a lot of sense to build this way because I was in an area that had a lot of earthquakes and a lot of storms.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is smart and it's cool. Nobody else is really doing it. And it kind of gave me artistic license to build with arches. And I always love like lancet arches and like Gothic arches and things like that. So I got to have a lot of creative license, and then learning all the free casting methods that I did like afforded me a lot of opportunities to like build for people that liked art, people that had a budget to like go for it. And which is really a lot of fun. Like when you actually are given artistic license to do things like that. For me, because I will never ever try and pretend that I'm more of a builder than I am an artist. In truth, I'm an artist at heart. I really love the creative process. And then I just found myself building on a big scale. But I love the artistry of it. In fact, I get the most excited, like thinking about like projects where I get to sculpt and like use my hands and, work with cob, or if I'm doing some sort of ferro cement project where I get to like make a post, just a regular post look like a tree holding up a second story or something like that. Like all that type of stuff gets me really excited.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, I figured I'd ask. I just didn't know if that was just like an aesthetic thing or what, because I know like some of the videos I seen where you were working and kind of giving people walkthroughs, like they had all those little triangles woven into the like the I-beams of the dome, and then you'd even put little crow's nests up top where people could like look out like a lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really cool.
If you guys want to check out my Instagram page, I have probably like 700 like little shorts on there of like the different building projects I've done. I think over like the last 8 or 9 years, I've been on Instagram. I've been posting little shorts. And yeah, it's really kind of cool. Those little triangles, the current dome style I prefer building is called a Japanese star dome. And it's like if you were to take Buckminster Fuller's, geodesic domes and just evolve them. That's the Japanese star dome, and you get all these overlaps. You don't have like the joinery coming to one point where it can fail. In the Japanese star dome, you only have 15 full members, but they overlap in a geometry that allows full runs. Every strut is a full run. And so you don't really have joints, you have overlaps. And so it works more like a bridge would. And those, when we freeze those in concrete, they're not going anywhere. Like pretty much everybody's like, oh, this is going to outlive like all of us. It's really magnificent. I love that medium in those shapes. Because as you already know, triangles make everything really wonderfully strong. But when you have a triangle that has a double curve in it, once again, that principle works before what I shared with the convexity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool, man. It's definitely unique. And you had mentioned the biochar, and I can't remember if this was pre-roll or during our recording, but you had mentioned that you had basically discovered this or ran across this also at the same time while you were down there in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Just kind of walk us through like how you discovered this and what exactly is it and the purpose? Just kind of give everybody like the walkthrough that's never encountered this or heard of this.
Yeah, I was really dumb when I moved to Costa Rica because I really didn't know the environment that I was moving into. And it was a tropical environment. I'm from South Florida. That's neotropical. But moving down to Costa Rica is like 100% humidity, well over 200 inches of rain.
I'm from Tennessee. We just call that hot as hell.
Exactly. And the things that I was planting on my farm, they weren't healthy. And one of the ways they're not healthy is essentially leafcutter ants. The leafcutter ants will come and mow down anything that's unhealthy. And so I had a considerable investment at the time into chocolate trees, into cacao. And I just had one grove of cacao, and the leafcutter ants came in and like decimated them. And so I was heartbroken. And I had a job in the northern part of Costa Rica near the Nicaraguan border that I would drive up to with the gentleman that hired me, who was a permaculture expert. And I was lamenting to him my problems. And he just told me, it was just like, look into this thing called terra preta. Because down there, biochar, they call it terra preta. Because that's what they called it down in South America. Okay. And this was like one of those, I don't know if you've ever had one of those friends that when they tell you something, you have to listen. Yeah. Like he was like, he had the Midas touch, like everything he touched was gold for me. So I listened to Itai and I looked into it and I was like, biochar, terra preta, wow. And my friends that had been down to the Amazon, they were giving me stories like things that they had never seen before. And so here was the magic of like how the rainforest down there got to be so magnificent and so huge was essentially after the Amazonians died, when the jungle retook all the cultivated land, because it was very heavily cultivated in like the 1500s when the conquistadors supposedly got there. When the jungle retook all that land, the jungle had roots that could go into this big, beautiful black soil. And as they were deforesting the Amazonian rainforest, they found these huge tracks, like miles long, perfectly straight. So it took them a few years to figure out how there were just these perfectly straight lines of biochar in the earth. And they figured out the system, and I was reading all about it, and I was like, oh, I can actually do that. I can replicate that. Because I had taken some PDCs, which are permaculture design courses, and I had learned about swales and berms and all this ways of doing hugelkultur and just all these ways of how to make your farm a food forest. But I wasn't good at it. I was failing my last name. I didn't have enough experience. So I was like, but the one thing I can do is I can make this black stuff. Because I had started my construction career in making rocket mass heaters, which is a rocket stove for those of you that don't know. It's like a cool way of setting a wood fire, where you get like this like roaring fire shooting out the top of your stack. And I was making those, and I figured out a way to modify the system where every time I cooked, I could make biochar. And I did, and it was awesome. I started top dressing my grove, my cacao grove, and my trees totally recovered and came back in full strength. And the leafcutter ants never bothered them again. My coffee, my little cafe tall that I had, my plants really started to grow, even though I wasn't at the right elevation. Usually good coffee grows at about 5,000 feet elevation. I was only at about 2,000. So I just started to see all my fruit trees that I was top dressing with it. They were doing so much better. And so I thought people would be really into buying the machine I made, because I'm a DIY guy. I'm like, oh, look, guys, I modified this rocket stove. You guys can make your own biochar. And like within 2 years, it was pretty funny because everybody's like, just give me the biochar. you do the work. I don't want to make a fire. I don't want to do the machine, because I was kind of living like a Swiss Family Robinson life. Like I had these rocket mass heaters, and I had outdoor bathtubs that I was heating with the exhaust, and I was like curing all my bamboo with the exhaust, and it was just like really kind of cool. Like I was doing like a lot. I was like living out that sort of Tarzan-ish type of dream. And so yeah, that stuff worked great. And then I had a client that was like, he came in from Europe, and he had the express desire and want to have the world's top durian farm. And durian is like the most expensive fruit in the world. And so a friend of mine became his farm manager, and we started talking about biochar, and he kept asking for more and more and more. Yeah, I was like, dude, I can't supply you. And so, and then COVID hit and all these other things happened, which brought my family back to the United States. But it was one of those things where it's like the writing was on the wall. It worked really well in the tropics. So when we moved up to the United States, I didn't want to make the same mistake I made when I moved down to Central America and be like, I know what I'm doing. I just kind of, for like 3 years, I just watched and listened and went to different speakers and different permaculture experts and saw different farms and kind of just cased the joint for a while. Got a good idea of where I could get the biomass from, who to hire to do what, and all the rest of it. And so after being here for 3.5 years, we just launched the site just a few weeks ago. So it's awesome. I'm like I'm over the moon with how well it's going, because what we can do here is so much higher grade than what we could do down in Costa Rica, because up here, there's so many more hardwoods that are processed, and we get all of our hardwood flakes, like all of our chips of hardwood, from Amish mills, and that's what we convert. And so for me, it was really cool because
it probably comes out good for overhead too, because that's probably stuff they're just going to throw away. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's awesome. It has the right amount of oil content. It's dry enough. Our retort kilns, which are like a alchemical Anthenor, like on a very big scale, we have them right on site. So we can process about 90 tons a week. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned that they had discovered this through deforestation.
Right.
Now, I assume that this is like by fire, because I seen a reel that your friend Benjamin or Owen Benjamin put out, and he was talking about biochar, but I was lost on the context of it because he was talking to people. I guess he assumed already knew something about it, but he was just showing this fire that he had going or had going, but it was still kind of just barely going, smoldering, but he was like shoveling up a little bit of the dirt around it, and you could see like fire under the ground. And he was like, see, this breaks all logic. We're told that fire needs oxygen, but obviously you don't, and I'm working on some biochar. Could you break down and maybe for the dummies like
the
me,
video is really
how that's made? Or
the video is pretty cool because he's up in Idaho where that video is being taken, in northern Idaho, almost at the Canadian border. And he had set this huge brush fire on his property. And one of the things that caught fire was this stump, this tree stump. And what it did was it essentially created what we call a Swedish candlestick, where the stump started to burn down and into the ground. And this is something a lot of us have theorized. I had seen back in 2008, I met the gentleman that had invented ground penetrating radar. He has the X radio channel. He was like one of the very first podcasters. He's a brilliant man. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I met him at Tesla Tech, and he showed us like what they would do is they would hit different areas. Of course, he worked for an oil company at the time, or the oil company hired him to find oil, right? But essentially the echolocation, when they would reverberate the ground and send radar into the ground, you could get like a 3-dimensional picture of what was in the ground. And he was showing us coal veins. And like when he was showing us coal veins, I was like, that looks like roots. And this was before that, like that documentary came out in 2017, like No Forests on the Flat Earth. Did you ever see that documentary? Well, it essentially showed like all these plateaus all over the world that just they're essentially the base of massive trees. And this gets into some biblical, concepts too. And each one of these plateaus, like the iconic Devil's Tower that I believe is in Wyoming, they say, oh, that was a lava, that was a pyroclast. And there's no way. all the hexagonal, like way the rocks go down, that's exactly the way like the xylem and phloem flow in the massive cedar trees. Yeah, there you go.
That's a petrified piece of wood.
Exactly. So what Owen was bringing up in his thing was that, oh, look, because I've been on his podcast probably 20 times, and we've talked about how if plasma hits anything of sufficient mass and it has a sufficient amount of amplitude, it will cause that instant petrification, and or it would create a burning phenomenon like biochar. Because all biochar is pyrolysis of something that's carbon. So technically we could be pyrolyzed, because if we grow, we're organic. We're made out of carbon. Like the majority of our structure of our body is carbon. And so anything that grows is carbon. And so what occurs is you can create this very, very structured, I call it coherent or crystalline carbon, through plasma arcing. Because when you plasma arc, a lot of times it sucks the oxygen away from whatever the plasma is hitting, which is what's needed for biochar to occur. And then all of the volatiles are released from whatever's in the carbon. This is what the alchemists figured out. This was their purification phase. And so Owen was just making the joke. He's like, oh, I get it now how all the coal is in the ground. It's just like making biochar. Like he was, just shooting from the hip. But there is some truth to that, because you'll get these burning veins underneath the earth, and the earth isn't allowing the atmosphere, which by volume is like, 15% oxygen. It's not allowing the atmosphere to actually get to the actual material that's quote unquote burning.
That's pretty wild, man. And I know one of the things too that I'd heard you talk about, there's some urine involved in biochar.
Well,
that's pretty wild.
It doesn't have to be, but it can be. Like that's a running joke within the whole like bear community, because they know me they know me as the guy that's just like, hey, just pee on it. And one of the reasons why I say that is because one of the best ways you can seed your biochar with the correct bacteria your plants need is you make a solution of your pee to water. It's like it's 10 water to 1 pee. You make that solution and you just pour that dilution over your biochar, and now that carbon matrix will allow the probiotic to be attracted to it that your urine signaled.
Are you a hunter, a hiker, or just an outdoor enthusiast? Well, if you are, you know that good quality gear is hard to come by. And finding all-American made is like finding Bigfoot in the woods. Hence the name of Squatch Survival Gear. Head on over to squatchsurvivalgear.com. Use the code PLP10 for 10% off store-wide.
And so it's like one of those things, like you ever wonder why your dogs go around peeing on everything or whatever. It's not just to tell other dogs what's up. It's also to allow the plants. It's allowed to let the environment to know. There's all these different ways in which we give off pheromones and we give off our bacterial imprint, and when we do that, the biome around us changes.
Yeah, that's pretty wild just how everything, is just a symbiotic system.
It really is.
Systems within systems. And it's just, if you don't see the system, it's because you're ignorant to it and just not, found it yet.
Yeah. That's totally true. I mean, that's what my podcast really, I talk to people that are into holotropic thinking and systems and in looking at it from a systems perspective. Because there's always, it's like what you did with your book. Your book is brilliant. And by the way, I've caused such a shitstorm with everybody I've shared your book to. I should say that you caused the S storm, but man, it is awesome. But to have that able to do like a little lateral move, wait a minute, this is similar enough where there's a there, that type of thing. I think that's where all the real great inventions happen.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times it's just wild how it's just, coincidences or random acts of just finding things, but I also seen, I think it was either you or Owen, but we're even talking about this could be applicable in paint.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I do EMF remediation in my domes. So a lot of people are very sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies, especially in the microwave band. And we crush up the biochar into a powder and we can add that to paint. And when you paint, say you have a cube, once again, a room is a cube. There's usually 6 sides to your cube. If you paint all 6 sides, and say you had windows, if you had windows, those were called low E windows. If they're low E, that means they have silver iodide in them. If you have low E windows and your walls are painted and you do, depending on the paint that you use, it's anywhere to 2 to 3 coats, that room would be completely EMF free.
No, that's wild.
Yeah. And so people are painting houses. The last 2 years, we've done a lot of experiments with what size of particle is optimal for that. And we're finding that the reason why it's so good at EMF remediation is also the same reason why it's so excellent in your soil. It's really remarkable what it's doing, because the reason why it reflects the smaller, there's this is a pretty scientific term, but it's called diamagnetic. So I'm sure people that listen to you, your audience, has heard of graphene, right? Like a few years ago, everybody's like, "Oh, graphene oxide." So all graphene means is it's a 1 molecule thick piece of stable carbon. That's all graphene is. It's the thickness of the carbon. So graphene is very, 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 very skinny carbon.
So what about graphite? What's the difference?
Graphite is when that's layered. And graphite doesn't necessarily need to be stable carbon. I used the moniker stable very specifically. Usually graphite, you have hundreds of layers of carbon that is held together with some sort of glue. You know, they're usually pasting it together with some sort of solvent-based glue. It's like a laminate, pretty much. That's what graphite is. Graphene is stable carbon or pyrolyzed carbon, or what I create, biochar, but it's very, very thin. And the reason why graphene is being used in all these hypercomputers and these quantum computers and things like that is because it's a superconductor, and it has 0 latency in signal propagation. So for those of you out there, what that's saying is there's no loss. There's no interference in a signal that goes through it. But here's the thing. With it being so diamagnetic, if anything is moving at the tangent to it, or say it's moving perpendicular to it, it completely reflects it. Whatever the thing is that's coming at it and that it will move through it has to be going in its direction of the hexagon that forms it. So when you make very, very small particles of this and they're in chaos, there's no little microwave, because a microwave is a millimeter wave. It's like a little millimeter, and it's trying to get through there. It's trying to get through all these different things that are facing in all different directions. And it just reflects it into oblivion. Nothing can get through it.
Yeah, it's
really
cool.
amazing.
And the only reason I know a little bit about that stuff is I work in plastics.
Oh,
And
great.
I do chemical compound mixing and extrusion. And I work for a small company, and it's all research and development. So we're always experimenting with new stuff and coming up with stuff for companies. And we've done stuff for NASA. We've done stuff for Exxon, the military, just all kinds of cool stuff. But we do a lot of graphite work.
Right.
And a lot of stuff, we mix polymers with graphite.
Right.
And I know that stuff, it's so thin, you know, you blow graphite out your nose some days, and the floor gets so slick, you know, anytime you run that stuff. But between that and other materials that we use, especially here recently, we're testing the conductivity. You know, they want this, whatever polymer we're making for this company, they want it, you know, extremely conductive.
Right. Yeah. I've done a bunch of podcasts and live streams with Jim Lee of the, what is it called? Climate engineering. Have you ever heard of Jim Lee, the South Carolina gentleman that does all the things on how weather is being modified or not?
No.
Well, Jim Lee, he's a good country guy, and he brings up this term called carbon black. Now, carbon black isn't necessarily biochar. You can get carbon black from like the inside of any, like, you know, I guess you call it refinery where they're burning something that is a hydrocarbon. And so you end up with soot, essentially. But a lot of that soot by weight is biochar. And so one of the very earliest ways that it's not only is it one of the earliest ways that you can modify weather, but it's also the most widely used way of modifying the weather is to take this carbon black. And I think they're lying. I think they're actually using like purely refined nano level type of biochar. This is why we all find it in our bloodstream. It's not because we're being pumped with it with a needle. It's because they're actually using it to modify the weather above us. But what it does is it is so diamagnetic. Well, guess what else is diamagnetic? Water. And two, birds of a feather flock together. So what's incredible about it is they'll move massive. I mean, I'm talking about huge weather systems with using this very, very pulverized, like I'm saying, nano level biochar or carbon black. They'll put it in front of a weather system, and because it's so easily moved with EMF frequencies, like an EMF frequency won't go through it, but if it's in a volume of air where it's free, they can push it. They can actually create like a wind that you and I couldn't feel, but like the electromagnetic frequencies could push it. And then the water wants to condensate onto that carbon black or condensate onto the biochar, and they're able to move that wherever they want. It's really amazing. And I think it was like in 2003 it was later than that. I think it was 2005. NASA was very upfront. Like I read this in Popular Science before I moved to Costa Rica. NASA was upfront. They were like, we're going to store most of the water that we want to use worldwide in the atmosphere. The best place to store water is up in the sky. And that's what they've been doing. That's why
even thinking about those hurricanes that come up into my neck of the woods, Appalachia. Everybody was talking about how weird it was that a hurricane come into Florida, and usually they get busted up and lose their strength. But this just kind of like gained speed and just got, kept on going, man. It's wild. And I didn't know until I seen just it was some, documentary or something on TV one day when I was just channel surfing. But they were talking about this weather modification stuff and how basically it was invented and first used in Vietnam. And they were saying that they had all these roads that they would go back and forth to the Vietnamese to run supplies, and that they were old dirt roads. And they knew monsoon season was coming, so they wanted to try to destroy those roads and make it hard for them guys in the bicycles, carrying all the stuff back and forth. So they seeded the clouds. That way monsoon season was, 10 times worse. And I was like, man, Forrest Gump was right again.
Yes.
You talk about all that rain.
Yeah. Sideways rain that came up from the ground. Yeah. If you go to climateviewer.org, I believe it is, Jim Lee has an incredible, he chronicles at the turn of the 20th century, they were modifying weather. They figured out over in the Industrial Revolution over in Europe that there was so much more rain near where the factories were, but it wasn't the old type of rain where you would have a frontal boundary come in and then it would just dump rain. It was sort of like this hazy, foggy, irky, wet rain. And they figured out very early on, all these coal refineries and things like that were throwing up these particulates in the air. It was causing the water to stick to those particulates. But because a lot of those particulates were lighter than the air, they just kind of hovered. And if you've ever had a greenhouse, a lot of the ways you can actually control the heat or how warm a greenhouse is by how much water vapor you have in your greenhouse, right? And so water has they call it a low specific heat, which means it takes a lot for it to change temperature. So if you increase the volume of water over you, and then that's acting like its own little greenhouse where it's modifying, you're not going to get the temperature differential like you used to where the things would just dump. And so this was known. There's article after article after article in the late 1800s about this. And so never let a good pollution crisis go to waste. They went ahead and they just weaponized it. They made it, and by the time they got to Vietnam, they were doing low I believe it was low cloud seeding. They didn't have to cloud seed that high up in the atmosphere. And they literally, like you said, they just created an ever-going monsoon season, which is very hellish. Being, living in monsoon season for 15 years, like I did, that's not something you ever want to do to your worst enemy. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it just totally blew my mind, because a lot of people want to deny it even to this day, that, we're conspiracy theorists. They can't do that. And no, they were doing this stuff in Vietnam. And like I said, even, us conspiracy theorists talk about how Big Brother, the Hollywood elites, the Luciferian elites, all these top people throw all this stuff in the movies on purpose, kind of like either an elbow rub to the people that know, and that wink, or even maybe some people theorize it's part of like the rules of engagement for the spiritual realm. How you have to, we have dominion, they have to tell us what they're doing, and we have to give consent. And so by not shutting it down, just even being passive on it, that we are consenting, so they can say, "Oh, we told you." I mean, Forrest Gump, man, we was telling you about all the rain and what we were doing. Yeah. It's a thing, and plus, then they can also say, "Oh, you saw that in a movie." Because they know the majority of people are, what do they call them? Not nitwits. They're not half-wits. The people that think they're smarter than they are, they're always the most dangerous one. They're the ones that are always the ones that are like, deferring, externalizing authority. And they're always like, CNN told me, they're so haughty with what they know. Yeah.
You're like, literally CNN is a propaganda company. That's what it is. So you're always going to have those types, intelligence favors the minority. So to me, it's just like, it's obvious. It's just an obvious thing. You just watch, anecdotally in your life, and you'll see these things happening. You're just like, oh, I really don't need to defer to another authority to tell me what's happening.
Right. Well, was there anything really cool that you found out with this stuff that's kind of like mind blowing? I know a lot of people, when they're researching something or discovering something, there's usually at least one thing that kind of blows people's minds and gets them, pacing back and forth and calling their friends and, trying to share their excitement with somebody. Most of the time people's like, "Oh yeah, that's cool, bro." Did you find anything like that in this journey with your biochar?
Well, you'll appreciate this side of it. I was working for General Burt Stubblebine in 2010 and 11, and he was the guy that was supposedly, there's so many different things out on the internet now, but he face to face and showed me all the back of the back, but he was the one who invented remote viewing, and he and his wife back then were going all around to internationally, flying around to all these UN meetings that they were doing, like Davos, and going to the WEF and protesting it. And he and his wife lived in Panama, so they were only 3 hours from my homestead in Costa Rica. And he was telling me, he was like, "Look, the Agenda 21 thing is happening. It's not going to get stopped. What we can kind of, what we're trying to do is really kind of put the brakes on Agenda 2030, which is a subset of Agenda 21. And Agenda 21 is the agenda for the 21st century, which is the UN's essentially guidelines for how they want to depopulate the earth by the beginning of, or by the end of the 21st century, the century we're in right now." And their guidelines are very flowery, but literally everything they're going down the list. And when I was reading the white papers around carbon, because he had hired me to actually help him find farmland for a coffee plantation, so that was my role. And so I was always talking about soil health and what we wanted from the landscape and all this other stuff. So in reading the papers, it was very obvious that they did an inversion. You know, I know you talk a lot about a lot of biblical information and really dive deep in that way. And, you know, what does the devil do? The devil inverts things.
Yeah.
And so it was very obvious that they were demonizing carbon. And in all of my studies, is like carbon doesn't hold any heat. You know, supposedly the space shuttle has carbon, you know, this carbon reinforcement all along its belly when it's making reentry because the heats are so high. You know, I don't believe any of that. But the point, if you read between the lines, is they're saying carbon doesn't like actually conduct heat all that well. Like when you look at carbon reinforcement to things, they use it in areas where they don't want to transfer any heat conductively because it doesn't do that. So I knew immediately, like the lies about, you know, CO2, you know, well, it's not the C in the CO2 that's causing any greenhouse heating. Not that any of that is even true, but all their science that they were bringing up was just utter BS. But the thing I got from it was like, the inversion is around carbon. They're saying we have an excess of carbon. But what am I seeing around every one of these farms, whether I'm in Nicaragua or Costa Rica or Panama, or even in the United States, is we're actually dealing with a lack of carbon. We're dealing with a deficit of carbon. And so as I was reading the white papers, I was like, well, it's the gig economy is going to be totally based on carbon credits, but we're in a carbon deficit. I'm going to fix carbon. Because in my mind, it was just like, I'm always going to have a fire. Nobody's going to take fire away from me. So I'm just going to do fire better. And I'm going to make the fire, every time I use fire, that fire is going to actually fix more carbon than I'm actually burning. So nobody can ever take fire away from me. But then at the same time, I'm concentrating this carbon, and then I can have a carbon offset. And because I know they're lying, they're inverting. We live in the time of inversion. We don't have a carbon, you know, we are in a carbon deficit. So let's start stockpiling carbon. Because everything, like, I mean, all of like the different, you know, head speakers at Davos and the WEF, and like they made carbon like the new original sin. And so in my contrarian way, I was like, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to actually, you know, fix this stuff and make it so it's stable. And it's kind of funny because even in their own system, when you do that, you kind of, I don't know, trump their system. Like their system doesn't really work because like, and it was so obvious too, because I think I first became aware of this around 2010. There hadn't been any ordinances about not using fire or anything like that. And so now I see like the last few years with these like, you know, quote unquote Lahaina fire or Paradise fire, or, you know, the fire in LA and the Palisades and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, this is the second part of the scam. The first part is to tell everybody, okay, guys, don't burn anything because you're putting too much CO2 up in the air, and that's changing the environment. Now, the second thing now is you have a whole generation of people that are scared of fire because they're seeing these cities reduced down to like white ash. And I could get into like the white ash of it all. Because guess what, guys? A regular fire in an open area doesn't do that. But so the second part of the propaganda wing now is like you're seeing all these places just eviscerated by fire, just obliterated. Yeah. And then, won't you know it, they're going to come in and they're going to have fire ordinances. My friends in Europe can't like they can't burn a fire in their city because of the smoke. You know, it's just like, okay, so everybody is now getting rid of their gasoline cars for electric cars. Well, guess where that electricity is coming from? people. That electricity is coming from coal being burned somewhere, or some other hydrocarbon that's being burned that's turning a turbine. It's clean electricity. No, it's not. Those metals, like that area of North Carolina north of you that got like trounced, like from that hurricane. What was that area full of? Lithium
for the batteries.
Yeah, those lithium ion batteries. Like all of this is like so insidious. Like, oh, we're going to switch everything to this battery technology. Oh, now there's all these natural disasters where all those resources are for those batteries. So I could just see, like, for me, I just look at this as like, I really want to have good food. I'm a foodie as a farmer. Good quality food for my family. And I want to have the capacity to always have the fire element, the real fire element around. And this is one of the ways I can do it. Like I can do all these offsets. And I can also teach people in other areas of the world where they can burn essentially a clean fire. Like with a rocket stove or rocket mass heater, by the time the exhaust comes out at the end of a rocket mass heater, it's less than 100 degrees. It's not even hot. So when they're flying over you with their thermal, because now they have, in a lot of these places, they have the drones that have the thermal scans, and they can see whether or not, where the hot exhaust is coming from. And then you get a ticket for 400 euros in your mail. So it's like, it's really crazy how certain areas of the world are being way, way over regulated when it comes to these elemental energies.
And see, that's one thing I never even thought about until you brought it up. But yeah, all the carbon, the global warming, and the carbon's the devil. That totally just like slipped by me without thinking about it till you mentioned it. Now I'm reeling in my head because I've heard people talk about the planes, shooting that crap out as they fly over and stuff. But in Tennessee, they made it illegal. So, I mean, I still see them from time to time, but it's not nearly as much as it was.
Well, it's a red herring. You'll appreciate this because you got that good old boy intelligence. So this is what Jim Lee's pointed out. You got to have Jim Lee on your show. He's an awesome, he knows his stuff front to back. So they, in Florida and Tennessee, they banned quote unquote chemtrails, but chemtrails, like what we're seeing up in the sky, we did a full live stream on this, and he gave me in real time all the different things, all the different websites to go to that would actually help me with plugins be able to predict. I have to say it's 100% of the time when there will be chemtrails and when there will not be chemtrails. And so what he's pointing out is they're doing the CIA thing with chemtrails. They're getting everybody to say chemtrails instead of pollution. When we see these chemtrails up in the sky, it's bad. We all instinctually know it's not good, but it's mainly pollution. And the reason why we're seeing it now so much more than we did when we were little is because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? We have 3 times the amount of flights now than we did back in the 90s.
Right.
That's a 300%. And now also we have so many more planes that are flying higher. There's a 10x increase in private jet flight. Those private jets are flying well above 40,000 feet. Well, guess what? The higher you go, the colder it gets. So what he shows on his website is this way of where you can actually go and you can go, okay, well, there's this humidity at this elevation. And there's this condition and this condition. And then you watch the flight, you can see there's all these different flight trackers. You can actually track these flights. You go, oh, this Gulfstream 7 that, took off from NYC and is going down to Dallas. That's flying right over my head. It's flying at 46,000 feet. And oh, there's the contrail. Like you can literally watch it in real time. So they got everybody doing like the Texas two-step with using wrong terminology. So when they ban chemtrails, you're not banning anything. What you need to do whenever you're speaking to government officials, you have to use the correct words for what is actually what you can control. A state cannot stop federal airspace. What a state can ban is when they do the low-flying cloud seeding. So that whole thing that happened in Central Texas, where, man, did they run some interference on that? Like, I mean, within a day, the homeboy, I forget the guy's name for that cloud seeding company, was like, oh, we only sprayed like 5 pounds of silver iodide. It was like 120 miles away from where the thing happened.
Hey guys, it's no secret that every single day your dollar loses its value. If a man invested $1,000 in silver in the 60s, today that same $1,000 would have magically turned into almost $30,000. Silver and gold only continues to increase in value. If you have a 401k or money sitting in savings, that is just a number in a computer system that is one EMP or hack away from being deleted forever. I've recently teamed up with Cornerstone Assets and Metals and started investing in gold and silver myself. And I highly encourage the listeners, if you have money in savings just sitting there, invest it in hard, tangible assets. The same thing with your 401ks. Take a 20 to 30% cut of that 401k, that number in a computer system, and invest into hard, tangible assets that is proven to only increase in value. Be sure to check out the link in the description or the number on the screen, and be sure to tell them that Doc Brown from Prometheus Lens sent you. Torches high, guys.
Are you kidding me? Like what 120 miles is with an upper airstream like that? You know how quickly that could get blown in a distance. Like, geez, that's nothing. But the cloud seeding is where we, as like when we go to our state legislature and stuff like that, where we could actually have some pull. That's where you can. That's an actual lawful term. That we could say, hey, look, I don't want any cloud seeding. Or this ordinance, you can't cloud seed using X, Y, and Z chemicals, because they use cloud seeding for agriculture, pest control, weather modification. I mean, I've
even heard they use it to try to make more clouds to darken the sun. That way that's cutting back on the radiation. What do they call them? The radiation storms, where those bursts are coming out of the sun and supposedly, overheating our planet and messing with our electronics and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, that's the dimming protocol that Bill Gates is talking about, and that same article that I read from NASA in 2005, where they said we're going to store the water, all of the water in the future, we're going to be storing it in the sky. They talked in that same article about albedo effect. And when you increase the water vapor in the sky, you create an albedo, which is a whitening. And when you whiten the sky, guess what white does? It reflects. The color white reflects. I know this because my biochar is black as night, and that actually attracts heat. So one of the benefits of having it in your soil is it actually warms your soil. But the white, this albedoing, when they make this like super, super, super fine condensation nuclei, and they spray that, they call that upper stratospheric aerosol dispersants. Those types of things, those are what's reflecting what would be considered cosmic or solar radiation.
Oh man, and one thing too that you brought to my mind when you was talking about that was Solomon in the Bible. He said nothing new is under the sun. That's true. And it's kind of like they're trying to revert back to the pre-flood world, because I'm a firm believer in what they call the canopy theory. That when they talk about the firmament, that was a water canopy, right, that was above the earth, and it pressurized our system so much more, made the air quality so much more pure. And So therefore the vegetation grew a lot bigger and larger. Trees were a lot bigger and larger. Humans were a lot bigger and larger. Animals. That's why the life spans in the Bible was so long, because of this canopy, and it just made everything so much greater, bigger, badder, stronger. And then when the flood came, it said the waters, the firmament opened its gates. The gates of heaven were open, so this canopy burst. Right. And all the water just come down. Then also the waters from the abyss, it said, burst forth. So I think that's wild. Now they're saying they're going to store the water in the atmosphere. Good possibility that's how it used to be.
Yes, yeah. And I think there's a lot going on with the geopolitical world where they're really trying to mimic a lot of things in the Bible. I think it's to their benefit to create catastrophe. I mean, there's like worldwide the amount of flooding, the flooding damage. It was just absolutely crazy, and that's not adjusted for inflation, by the way. Like when you just look at per capita, how many people were actually ousted from their homes this year worldwide. In Europe, it was a banner year. I forget what percentage of people had their property destroyed from flooding. It's astronomical. It's happening in China. It's worldwide. And I think it has a lot to do with what NASA was saying 20 years ago. We're going to store the water up there. I mean, when I was growing up, nobody ever used the term atmospheric rivers. And I was like a decently headsy guy. Like I was listening to these things because growing up in Florida, we were always watching for hurricanes. My dad and I used to plot them. We used to have our map with the plotting, and we'd get the coordinates every day and map it. And so I would have been one of those types that would have heard the term atmospheric river. I've never heard that. Yeah, I had an uncle that worked for the NOAA, and not once did I ever hear him say, "Oh, atmospheric river." Now it's like common parlance when they're discussing there's what were they saying last year when it was snowing? They were getting so dramatic with these terms. They were saying, "Oh, this is like a blizzard bomb or a cyclone vortex." They're using all these I don't know if it's just the news cycle today that they have to be dramatic to get clicks or whatever they're doing. But I mean, years ago, I used to pay for this quarterly report from this guy called Cliff High. And he had his WebBot project. Do you know who Cliff High is? So Cliff High, he was like one of these people that claimed that he was like one of the first people that had bots out on the web, and that he would aggregate information into a report. And what he said was that people are psychic. And it was very much on the same level of if you've ever read Rupert Sheldrake, where Rupert Sheldrake is pretty much people will start to act differently before something big is going to happen. Their language will change. There'll be these little different things that they'll start to act out because on a very deep level, we are getting the premonition. It's like just before a tsunami comes, all the animals run away from the beach. Well, we do that. We do that on a social level. And so what Cliff High was talking about was he was like, okay, I can see in the differences in all these language sets, I can make predictions off of the change of the language. And so in 2011 or 2012, the big word that kept coming up in his data sets was atmospheric river, atmospheric river, atmospheric river. And when you know it, I was in Florida. I grew up in Florida. I know Florida weather very well. And when I was a kid, we got more rain than they do now. But now when it rains, they're like, "Oh, it's an atmospheric river," on the news, because my parents still watch the news. So I'll watch it when I'm there with them. And I was just so I don't know if this is some sort of social engineering thing where they're trying to condition us with these really, these overly dramatic terms or not. Or they're kind of doing that thing that we were talking about with movies earlier, where they're kind of telling us what they're doing. And just through tacit agreement, we're just like, oh, okay, no problem, nothing to see here, you know. To me,
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain,
right? So yeah, it's a thing. The weather modification is a thing. I'm under no illusion. That's another reason why I build the domes, because the domes are hyper resilient. Like pretty much everything I'm doing, like if you look at it, it's just to be resilient. It's just a kind of like hedge against, you know, the onslaught that's happening.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Defending yourself against Big Brother and all the schemes, man. Chris, man, is there anything else that you wanted to get out before we sign off and give the plugs and stuff?
No, well, I mean, if you guys like what Justin and I were just talking about, you know, this is like, I do this on my podcast, the Biocharisma podcast, quite a bit. We're upwards of 200 interviews. I've just had a great time. I've researched this stuff to the hilt. Like I've really gone deep, and I've actually been in the weeds with a lot of people that were like, you know, let's just say 1 degree of separation from the origin to a lot of these things. So I really feel like the data sets that I'm able to provide are pretty awesome in that way. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. What about the biochar and your products and stuff? How could they buy this if they were interested?
blackgoldbiochar.com. So
okay.
blackgoldbiochar.com, that's where the biochar is being sold. We did our soft launch 2 weeks ago. Actually, we're coming up on 3 weeks, and it did wildly well. We're going to be populating we have 6 more products that we'll be adding to the site within this month. So when January rolls around and people start thinking about spring and getting their gardens going, we're going to have a whole bevy of different things that you guys can get. And if anybody's interested in construction, I have my Topher HQ. Like my name's Christopher, so Chris Topher. All my friends call me Topher. So, you know, a few years ago, I thought it was kind of cool just to have Topher HQ. That's my headquarters where I had everything under that umbrella. That I have my construction work on. If you want to reach out to me, if you're looking into domes or anything like that. And then Biocharisma is my moniker for my website. Excuse me, not my website, my podcast, my live stream, all of like the YouTube, the Instagrams, the Telegrams, all that's under Biocharisma, which has biochar in it. The reason why we didn't go with it was so funny. I thought most people would understand like Biocharisma has biochar in it. and most people didn't. They're like, oh, I never saw the biochar in Biocharisma.
Yeah.
So that's why we went with a different name for the biochar website.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I know you get into Little Season, Old World Architecture, and some other stuff too, man. So I'd love to have you back and dive into some of those subjects as well too.
And Doc, I gotta tell you, man, your book is breaking people. I shared you with David Murphy, allegedly Dave. I shared you with Dr. Moshe Daniel. I mean, people that are like extremely, like when I say like rooted in what they believe in. And what your book is doing to them is just awesome.
Oh man, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of those things, man. And I honestly thought about making like a little picture to put like out on Instagram or social media, how people take reviews and put them up there with a picture of their book or whatever. I had one guy. It was actually Richie, is a guy I personally know. Which on the review, it don't have his name, but I just knew it was him because he'd mentioned it to me. But he put on there, if you are open-minded and willing to admit that you do not have it all figured out and are curious about the biblical narrative, that you will thoroughly enjoy this book. It says, but if you got it all figured out already and you are firm in your beliefs and unwilling to entertain new ideas, do not read this book. It will break you.
I've seen it. That's awesome. That tells me you're on the right path. That tells me that there is like, I knew the second I heard you bring it up that was it on the Dig or something like that? It was on a different. It wasn't your podcast when you first brought it up. You're talking to
Bo Kennedy.
Bo Kennedy.
Yeah, the bump.
The bump, and I was listening. I was like, "Oh, there's a there." Yes, and then you got into it on your own. That actually, I listened to the bump before. That's what brought me to you. And so I heard you there, and then I had to follow the breadcrumbs. And yeah, man, it's been awesome watching your journey on Prometheus Lens. I really appreciate it.
No, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate the love. And that's one of those things, I'm still finding stuff, man. I just had to cap that book, and I was like, man, if I need to, I can do a volume 2 with some revisions or something down the road. But yeah, there's the whole Esau and the connection with the Rothschilds.
That's right.
Them infiltrating the church and stuff, the Jews who say they are Jews, but they are not. I mean, yeah, this rabbit hole's a lot deeper than what I went. So,
have you been able to get on with Madeline of Leaving Babylon? Are you connected with her at all? I need to connect you to. She's awesome because she's she's an alternative historian such as yourself, but very biblically based. And she's really following this very specific thread with essentially like the different geography than what we've been told that we're in. And I find it fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. You would really dig it.
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
That's true. I just got that.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for your time. You know, as I say all the time, that is life's most valuable asset, and I appreciate you spending it with us, man.
Hey, any excuse to hang out, I'm there.
All right, man. Hey, guys, check out his stuff. Get you some biochar, as you've seen today. Multi-use, multi-purpose, and it's fighting the man.
That's right.
Put us in a carbon deficit and join Chris and give the middle finger to the man. You know what I'm saying?
You go.
And check out his stuff and check out his podcast. As you can see right here, dude, he is a big brain guy. A lot of the stuff he talked about tonight was right over my head, dude. So he's a smart dude. You would not be disappointed checking out his work, I guarantee you. Hey, guys, remember, the difference between the known and the unknown is what? It's the journey. So good journey, guys. Another conversation that I'm just blown away. Man, Chris is just such a big brain guy, man. He's a smart dude. He knows his stuff. Doesn't matter if it's architecture, if it's gardening, all that sciencey stuff, dude. He's just so freaking smart. I just had to sit back and try to soak up what I could. He did a good job of breaking things down for this trailer park redneck to understand. I hope you guys understood it too. I love how it ventured off into weather modification too. It was just a really good conversation. Hey, this is what I live for, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Hey, be sure to check out his podcast and his website. And hey, order you some biochar, baby. Torches high.